Welcome to the Rush. Today is day 7 of the dailies. Hopefully I'll get the second part of the 6th daily updated later today. Unfortunately I had to do some editing to it and still in the process of being edited. I've changed the focus a little bit on the camera, just try and keep getting better with the camera, getting a better focus so we can see what's going on. First thing I'm going to do this morning is get this base done. Could have done it last night off camera, to be honest. It's a bit of me wondering why I didn't. So the first thing I'm going to do is tackle getting this base sorted and then start tackling his limbs, working towards getting them assembled. Hopefully maybe later today, don't know, we'll see. And once he's painted, we're going to paint the archaeologist, or finish painting the archaeologist. So, standard procedure for me at the moment. I've done this several times, so I'm going to try and do this quickly. I'm not going to spare or bother you with too much of the details. So, metal dental tool, used as a spatula, and I'm just dumping a fair amount of this stuff out on the base. I'm using Astrogranite Grey by Games Workshop. I have got the AK texture paints to use, I just haven't played with them yet, and I'm trying to keep consistency across the army. So as this is what I started with, this is what I will continue to use for the moment. It's just a case of dumping enough of this out that I can spread it around in a minute. We are going to try and blend some of this into the rock, so I'm putting a little bit more out because we're going to have to spread it further than I first thought. Make sure I get most of the base. We could tidy that up later. Again, at this point all I'm doing is using a slightly finer dental tool to pull this stuff about before we come in later, just at the end with the brush. I'm trying to pile it up in a few places towards the edges where bits of the model actually meet the base, so that I can feather that out a little bit later on. You won't be able to see that because it's underneath a piece of terrain on the base, but it's basically same process, just pulling it around. Just last little spot. Then swap tools. Right. What we can use now is a rather large old brush. Same brush I've used repeatedly for this process. It's old Army Painter small dry brush. And get the brush wet, just try and prevent stuff travelling up. And whilst this bit of it is still fresh, I'm going to attack the bit around the crease first, whilst the brush is still at its cleanest. It's just about trying to blend the priest in a little bit better. So I don't have to risk that paint job. Don't matter if a little bit gets up, but we don't want it getting up high on the model. Now we can move on. There are a few places I may have to wash the brush for. I'm just giving it a wiggle rather than trying to move the brush around too much. I'm just putting the brush in and giving it a little wiggle about in a few of those places so that I'm not moving too much material about. I've got a little bit on the rocks. I'm going to have to come clean that, but that'll do largely. Still need to clean the brush a little bit more. That'll do. I'll just wipe that off the top of the rocks. Won't have too much of a consequence because we are going to wash this with some rattling grime and then get Van Allen Blizzard over the top of that. So, like previous, I'm not going to be too precious about it, but I did want to make sure there wasn't any on top of that rock. I now need to leave him to dry off a little bit. I've just noticed there's another little patch next to that skull that I need to do. That's better. Let's say we'll blend that out with the rattling grime and the Van Allen Blizzard when we get to it. I'm going to leave him to dry. The only thing I need to paint on him now is his eye lenses and the cartouche. So for now, I'm going to put him to one side whilst we move on. Right, I've got a sword that I need to sort out, and I've got some arms that I need to sort out. So I need to paint some of this in metallics. So all this that's white at the moment that goes around his arm, I need to paint out, preferably in black, and then the caps on these need to be gold. I do need to do something about the back of his tabard, and I need to paint the top of that black as well. So I'm going to break out some lead belcher. First thing I'm going to attack is the back of this tabard. Just need to give it a coat so that we can wash over it a little bit later with some rattling grime. Put that down. Alright, which one of these am I going to tackle first? I think it's got to be this guy. So I want to try and avoid what I've already started painting red. I need to do the ends of the arm joints. Make sure there's no blue tack on them from where he was sub-assembled. So just going for the very top of the arm section just to finish the detailing off on that bit. I do need to do the elbow joint, but I want a different brush for that. I'm trying not to paint the face that's going to get the glue on it. So just doing all of the arms now. I believe there's another arm somewhere. One, two, three, four. No, we have done them all. Right, change brush. Use a much finer brush this time. That's what I want to do. It's just the ends. Of these sections. That side. Sorry if I'm being quiet, folks. I'm trying hard to focus without making mistakes. So that's that one. one. Sorry, I'm having to bring it close to me to see what I'm doing myself. That's that one. Last little bit of the silver. Once those are dry, we will have to wash them with some rattling brine just to keep it all keeping in theme with the rest of the model. Next thing I'm going to put on is the black. For this I'm using Army Painter's matte black. Just find it's a little better than Chaos Black. I like Chaos Black, don't get me wrong, but I find it's just a little better paint. So I'm going to use the same brush again because I want to be quite careful. I'm going to have to do two things with this. First of all, I'm going to coat the outside and get the outside done. But I've got an underside that I need to take care of as well. And with this, I'm more than prepared to have to come in and give it 2 coats of paint. Do want to be quite careful about the details. So I'd rather use a thinner paint than have something that's thicker and it's going to obscure some of the details. I'd rather build this up in 2 coats if I can. It's more about being careful because I don't really want to get any of this on the bone that I've already put down. Now, I could have done this using Games Workshop's Black Templar contrast, but my worry is that it being so fluid, it can be a bit flicky, and at the same time it's very, very runny, and it could run in unforeseen directions into places I don't want it. So now that I've done the outside, I'll do the front face first. So now I've done the front face, I'm going to do the back. Now I'm going to try and show you on camera how I'm going to do this. Getting the brush quite moist. So the paint is runny as I can get it without it being an ink. I'm going to try and pull the brush just along that inside face. So I've managed to get that side. The harder one is going to be this one. I have to come at an angle for this one and slide the brush in, and hopefully I've got enough paint on the brush that I've caught most of that. Just doing the connection at the bottom. Same for the top side. Now I almost can't see what I'm doing there, but I can feel the behaviour of the brush. Now, because I came from the front, I could come in from the side to get most of the back. Just a tiny little bit there that I haven't got. Now I need to try and get just the top side on the inside edge. This is why I prefer sub-assemblies. This would have been absolute nightmare fuel to paint on the model as is. Yeah, you'd have had to start from a black base coat and then hope you didn't get too much in. If he was fully assembled, he would be nightmare fuel to paint. So we've got a layer of black on the inside and the outside. We're going to leave him to dry. I'm not going to worry at the moment about giving parts of the staff a second coat of black. I'm not even going to worry about painting the bottom of the sphere at the moment. Now we'll come back to the sphere at the end. There are two crystals that we're going to have to paint. So what we're going to do is we'll probably paint the blade first and then come back in and paint the crystal afterwards. This is going to become increasingly complicated to put together if it was not fully painted, more or less, to start with. So I'm going to put a little bit of a glaze over the black stone. Just want to start darkening that down. And the first thing I'm going to use is a bit of the Vulpes pink, which is the same colour that was used on the priest's robe. Using this straight out the tub, and what I'm looking to do is apply it to the front face of the black stone towards the middle. And this should just start darkening it up a little bit. I don't want it to read as completely pink. I want the edges to end up reading as pink, but I want a lot of it to not be. So we're going to do that by darkening it up successively with some layers of colours. So that's a little bit on there. I'm going to let those metallics dry off a little bit and let the base dry for a little while. And once they're done, we'll get on with the rattling grime. Right, come back, clean the palette, and the base is pretty much dry. So we're going to do the same as last time. Some Illuminor medium. Rattling grime. Apologies, I think I might be coming down with a cold, folks. And just going to paint rattling grime. Over that astrogranite grey that we've put on there earlier. Move some of the parts out of the way. So literally not worrying about being too precious with this, trying to stay away from things that we've already painted. Do the other side of him, just try and get in there between the robes. We did get a little bit on, but it's a very similar colour and it's very dark, so it being in the recesses won't be an issue. And literally just dabbing this on now. I feel a bit Bob Ross doing this at arm's length. Just happy little accident, just dabbing a little bit of colour here and there. Almost all done. I'm not too worried about it coming up the edge of the rocks, purely for the fact that we'll be putting Valhalla and Blizzard over the top of this, so those kind of mistakes we can hide with the Valhalla and Blizzard. So this is based, given a coverage of rattling grime. I bring it up a little bit so it's a bit more in focus. So it's just a 50-50 wash Illuminor medium, rattling grime. Leave that to dry, and then we can put the Valhalla and Blizzard over the top of it. In the meantime, I need to look at not only the bone on the forearm. I also need to look at finishing off that black. So let's just check, are there any bits that I really need to come and attack with bone colour? There are a couple of bits on his wrist, but I think I might leave that until after I've done the second coat of black on that. I do want to get the balls on the staff, possibly on his back, redone. I need to also do his eye socket, and there's also, I believe, another one on the front of the tabard, so I'll do that first before I come back in with black. So a little bit of water on the palette, some wraith bone into it, a little bit more. Brush is too big, need a small brush. So with the staff, I just want to make sure that I haven't got any bits that are going to end up with Tesseract glow that are anything other than wraith bone coloured. So there's a couple of little bits I might have to put a couple of coats in. It's just that bit there. Just the very top of the staff. I just want to make sure that as I start out putting the glow in, I'm also going to do this crystal at the same time. Try very carefully not to bend the parts in my fingers. Couldn't see that. Sorry, I had to get that close enough for me to see myself what I was doing. I'm just going to rest that there so that those crystals can get dried without actually falling on their face onto the surface. We've got this little one on the tabard to do. And at the moment I'm not worried about being neat because I've got to come back in and edge this with black. So I don't have to be too precious about getting it onto the rim. Just don't want to get it onto the lower part of the tabard. As long as I keep it on the top, I'll be fine. And I'm probably going to need to give that a couple of coats just because the coverage ain't brilliant. especially using it watered down and thin. It's got a good coverage, but you will need a couple of coats. So it's the bit on the tabard, it's a bit on the staff. The other bit I haven't tackled. I don't really want to turn this model too much because I don't want the contrast that I've put on it already to run. So do the best we can. We won't really see this part, so I just want to get the effect that there is a colour back there other than black. Make sure I get the underside. There is a bar there. Right, that makes a difference. I will probably have to come back in with a little bit of black, just touch that up. But as we're doing that with all of these spheres on this model, we're painting the bone colour in first and then tidying it up before we put Tesseract glow on. You won't see more than that. Even if you look at the underside, you're not going to see that part. So and again, that'll probably need a second coat on it once it's dry. In the meantime, we've got a couple of other little jobs we need to get done. We need to highlight the emblem on his cartouche, on his chest. And again, this is going to be difficult because I don't want to tip the model too hard. Try to keep it all in focus for you folks. So I'm just bringing the edge of the brush, and I'll be honest, this is one of those examples where a smaller brush don't always work, and having the right tool for the job does. So this is what I was on about earlier. Yes, some people think, oh, you've ruined your brush, you've got a curve in it. I actually find this actually useful. Load a bit of pigment onto the brush, using the curved side of it. I'm now going to try and just get the raised bit. Cartouche is done. So using the curved part of the blade brush, I think to myself, is that one of the reasons why butchers and that have a curve on some of their blades? It's useful. It's not there for aesthetic purposes, it actually has a physical use. Right, I can use that Sycorax bronze for something else as well. I should have carried on. There's another element that I need that colour on. We will use the bigger brush. That should be dry enough for us to use. What I want to do is just paint this cartouche here in Sycorax bronze. Again, I don't need to worry about being neat because the details around it will be painted over anyway at a later date. At the moment, all I want to do is make sure this part is bronzed. I've got this side to do still. Just making sure I've got some of the edge so that it's got the next coat picks it up quite well. And again, I'm going to rest that on its tips because I don't want to either face sitting on the surface. That's the bit I've just literally painted. Right, those earlier bits should almost be dry now. I can come back in with a second coat of wraith bone. I think the brush is too wet. We may have to have a play with that later. That one's relatively good. I've noticed a bit of movement in his body. The last little detail, I can use that wraith bone on. I'm going to put my little brush. Have I dropped it? Yes, I have. Use a little bit of this wraith bone mix for his eye lens on the front. I've already given it one coat, but it will help just in the centre of the lens. And what I will do is have another look at this with a small brush. Leave that to dry. We'll put Tesseract Glow on that after we put X-Ray Flame on it. So we're not far off getting around to assembling it in some degree. We've still got some black to repaint on him, some detail on his hand that we need to paint. I'm going to tackle the blackstone now. What we're going to use is some Nagaroth Nightshade, again to darken that down. I'm going to make a wash of this. So I've got quite thin, and again I'm painting it over the surfaces, trying to actually capture some of that recessed detail this time. So I'm going to leave that to dry now, and I'm going to leave those parts to dry. And I think what I'm going to do is, given the length of time, I'm going to call that the end of part 1. Once that's dried off a bit, that base, we will come back. So in the next part, what you're going to see is me putting the Valhalla Blizzard on, hopefully putting the black rim on, putting the Tesseract glow in, starting actually assembling him, and then we will probably need to correct some details with what's in his hand and stuff afterwards, but he should be mostly assembled by the end of the second video. If you've liked what you've seen, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. I've been the Adept of the Brush. Thank you for watching.